So this is going to be something a little bit different, a little bit special. Sometime around February 2010, I had this writing assignment where I had to interview a family member and write a report on it. And after moving a lot, we actually found ourselves in a situation where we lived close to my grandparents on my mother's side. And so I reached out to my grandfather and we sat down and we had a conversation. I recorded it on my very barely functioning, even then, boombox. And I found that, and I want to put this up somewhere to make sure that it is preserved and that my family, more specifically his family, can view it and listen to it. Now I'm going to give some warnings. The audio is pretty bad, especially for the first 4 minutes, because my 13-year-old self decided it will be a good idea to try and record an interview in the middle of a Chili's while we were waiting for our food. It gets a little bit less rough after that. I hope you enjoy this.
My mother never owned a car in her entire life.
Whoa.
I had no brothers and sisters. My father left when I was about 8 years old, so I grew up without a father. I guess sharing time with my mother was my happiest point of childhood. She was a fine lady, a very good person, very intelligent person, and a lot of fun to be with. Had a great sense of humor.
It looks like she helped you through the depressing parts of the depression.
Absolutely.
Oh, and if you ever want to go back and add something to an answer that you thought things might be helpful that you didn't remember, please do. Okay. How did it affect your childhood over what it might have been? Well, actually, you kind of covered that through the last question. So, how did your family cope with it? How did you find food? Keep yourself from starving?
Well, we kept working. My mother worked all the time. She worked at the General Denver Hotel in Wilmington.
Okay.
And later on, after I was an adult, she worked in a restaurant, a couple of different restaurants as a waitress. But I worked from the time I sold magazines. I had a paper route. I was a pin setter in a bowling alley when I was in the 5th grade. And later on in high school, I worked in the hotel. I started as a bellhop. My senior year, I was the second shift desk clerk, checking people in, assigning rooms, and all that.
It sounds like you guys definitely had jobs at a consistent basis.
Yes, we did. We were very lucky in that respect. It was enjoyable. So we kept very busy. Didn't have a lot of free time.
Okay. How old were you when it started to feel like the depression ended? Just about, an estimate around.
Oh, probably 16 or 17. Since I graduated from high school in 44, the war started in Europe in 39. Our country entered the war in December of 41. So with the advent of the war, doctors were hiring people to work to build equipment for the military, weapons for the military, provide transportation. All of a sudden, people were being drafted
Oh,
Being moved around. Okay.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
We're gonna pause for now. We're gonna pick up in a little bit later.
Muffin.
We're back. We're now at Oprah's house. We're going to start where we left off. By finishing a bit. How did the Great Depression affect your life in the years after it ended?
Made us very aware of the need to be responsible, to work hard, to do a good job. And if you did all those things, you had a chance to have a good life.
Seems like it made your life, changed your life for the better instead of the worse.
Well, we had little or nothing, so today people expect everything, whether they work for it or not. People expect to move into big houses, new cars,
And that's why they
all
go
the
into
luxuries
debt.
of life, but without working hard to achieve those things.
And so they go into debt, and then
They go into debt too far. There was no debt allowed back when we were doing it, when we were working. There were no credit cards. You paid cash, or you had 90.
I say we just run up all the credit card companies and that'll fix all the economy.
You had, on certain items, you could get credit for 90 to 120 days. You had to pay it off at the end of that. So it was really a cash purchase with payments spread out over 90 to 120 days.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, in my house, that's pretty much the way we do it.
you're better off that way. But people that just spend wildly end up with credit card debt that they can't handle, and then they're in deep financial straits, and sometimes they go bankrupt.
And then basically it's going to be the Great Depression all over again.
It could be, I guess.
Seriously, then my generation's going to have to worry about it.
Yep. Okay.
Talk to me about becoming a paratrooper in World War II.
Oh. Well, I went through infantry basic training, which was 17 weeks, and we were getting $50 a month.
For context, $50 in 1945 was worth what $712 are worth in 2020.
And I had an allotment for my mother that took out $28 from that 50. I had GI insurance that took out more. I had to pay a monthly laundry fee. I ended up getting $10 to $12 a month was all I had to spend.
For food?
Well, no, we were fed in the military, but
So that was basically 10 to 12 for just
everything, luxury,
for luxury.
entertainment, what have you.
So those were your basically what you would buy at the
PX.
yeah.
So then a recruiter comes through and is talking about $50 a month more for jump pay. I figured, hey, I can use that $50, so I signed up.
And then you ended up with $10 a month.
No, well, I had 50 plus the 10 or 12, so I got a big raise in pay. That's fact.
Sounds like it was a really good deal.
Yeah, once you qualified, you drew that jump pay every month from then on, and you had to do training jumps periodically to maintain your status. That was not a big problem.
It was probably just fun time.
Oh, it was fun time. We enjoyed it.
Okay. Did you make any good friends as a paratrooper.
Yes, made some very good friends. But I lost touch with them when I got out of the Army. I never saw them again. So that was kind of sad.
Do you remember a little bit about any of them?
Not really. It's been too many years ago.
Okay.
I mean, I was 20 years old when I got out. Went in at 18, right out of high school.
Wow.
I was in 2 years and about 10 days, 2 years and 20 days. They finally, it was amazing. I had a friend who we went overseas together, and then I never saw him again. But there were people who, as we approached the end of 1945, the war had ended, and we had no knowledge of when we would ever get out. And people started re-enlisting because they got a 30-day leave to go home. They had to enlist for 3 more years. Well, by the end of the year, the government had come out with a new policy that if you had 2 years of service, you could be discharged. So,
Discharge, that means they could fire you?
well, they let you out. They sent you home.
That was nice to be with your family.
Oh, absolutely.
But you
And
lost.
also, the big deal there was they had the GI Bill. So I was able to go to college on the GI Bill, and it paid most of my tuition and books. Didn't really cover living expenses too much. So I lived at home, went to college for 2 years at Wilmington, worked part-time, and then a very close friend of mine ended up at Valparaiso Technical Institute, and I kept in touch with them, and it was the first truly electronic school that I'd ever heard of. Electrical engineers back in those days were basically power people, 60 cycles, no electronics. So here was a school that taught no power, but all electronics. And that was what attracted me, and that's what got me going.
What do you mean? You learned about, what do you mean electronics?
Well, like radio is electronic, TV is electronic,
Cool, so you can learn
communications is
about how they work.
electronic, yeah. And you could design them.
That's really cool.
Yeah. But at the big universities, people getting electrical engineering degrees got no training like that, so they knew nothing about electronics.
So that's cool.
Yeah, it really was.
Okay. Were you involved in any battles, actually? Did you ever jump to any?
Never saw combat. I was in Belgium when the war ended.
Got it.
Very lucky.
How did you feel about the fact that you weren't in it?
Well, in a way disappointed, but mostly lucky because I'm still alive.
Okay. Second answer. Could you say that again because I'd like to quote you on that?
Oh, I felt lucky because I'm still alive.
Okay. How did you meet your wife, Helen?
I met her at a dance at Valparaiso Technical Institute, where I went to college.
Okay.
And we started dating. And I knew very quickly I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. She didn't know that yet.
I guess it took a little while to get him.
So I proposed 2 or 3 times, and she kept saying no, no, no. So then I did not propose anymore, and she finally proposed to me.
I guess it's like Miss Pac-Man. First he's chasing her, and then she's chasing him.
Yep, something like that.
You don't have to answer this one. It might be a little bit personal.
Okay.
But how did it feel when you realized that your wife was pregnant for the first time?
Oh, surprised and happy. We both wanted children.
Okay. Okay. Now I'd like you to tell me a little bit about raising each kid individually.
Oh, wow.
Starting from the oldest.
With Gary.
And then with the youngest.
Well, I grew up an only child and had not been around babies or young kids. So I was very unprepared from that standpoint. Your mother, on the other hand, had 6 brothers and sisters. She was one of 7. So she'd been around family a lot. And, so it was a new experience. We were thrilled, very proud, very happy. Turned out to be a fine man.
Okay.
Number 2 is David.
Okay.
Gary, by the way, was born in California.
California?
We were
Did you
living.
get to see Disney?
There was no Disney there then. Really, no Disney. Really. But we moved back east when he was very young. Ended up changing jobs. I was a field engineer with an Air Force unit. Well, it was before the Air Force. It was Army Air Corps. And they were going to send that unit to Europe, and we did not want to go, so I got transferred. And I ended up in Oklahoma. And after a few months there, I decided I wanted to go back to school. So we left Oklahoma, moved to Ohio, to Columbus. I got a job at North American Aviation in their electronics department. And I worked the second shift, which enabled me to go to school during the first shift. So I enrolled at Ohio State. I went to school for 2 years to get my bachelor's degree in business administration.
Okay. So you've got it. Tell me about raising David.
Oh, David. David was born. He was born in Belfast, Indiana.
Where you met Oma, right?
Right. With our moving around, we hadn't gotten established yet. I just started work for North American. In fact, as I recall, I was living at the Y. And so Oma and Gary were at her parents' home in Belfast when David showed up.
Just showed up out of the blue?
Well, we knew it was coming. And he pretty much arrived on time, as I recall.
Wow. And
So I finally found a house to rent in a new neighborhood. And, sure.
What is it?
3 o'clock.
Could I please pause for a second?
Sure, absolutely.
So back to talking about David.
Yeah.
He popped out of the blue. You're Alma with you
Yeah.
at your mother's house.
Well, Gary was only about 13 months old then, I think.
Wow.
So they came very close together. And kept your grandma very, very busy because I was working 48 hours a week and going to college 10 to 12 hours a quarter,
Wow.
which meant 3 classes like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or more. And it was a happy time, but a very busy time. Very busy.
What about when you were a teenager or when you were preteen?
Well,
When you were a little bit older than infant.
yeah, they each one is an individual, different personality, different temperaments. But very good boys. We were very proud of both of them and happy to have their company. It was an enjoyable time. We enjoyed family life very much. They both graduated from high school. And, Gary went to school in Cincinnati and got an associate's degree. David ended up going to Ohio State. Got a business. So, on to number 3. Jeffrey.
Remember, this isn't just like facts and dates. These can be stories or funny events or funny habits.
We had a very cohesive family. We enjoyed each other's company. We had fun together. Everybody worked. It was normal back then for young people to have a part-time job after school, weekends and stuff. An interesting thing is one of my customers here in town was R.L. Drake, who was a leading manufacturer of amateur radio equipment, ham radio equipment. And David got a job there. I think he started out part-time and then became full-time. And he worked there for, I don't know, a year or two. And then he heard people talking there about how happy they were with their jobs in the company. He started thinking, this is what I'm going to be the rest of my life. And that's when he decided to go to college to get a degree.
And he stayed with AM radio?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, he back then FM was fairly new, but I'm sure he had FM too. FM was more of a music service.
And more of a, like, stories and
News
stuff.
and all that. But then
And basically the version of television before television was invented. Okay. Who came after that? Unless you want to talk about him a little bit.
Jeff came after David. Jeff is more than a year or so younger than David. And we were both surprised and happy when he showed up. made more work for Grandma, taking care of 3. But I was still in school at the time, if I recall.
Looks like you better get out of there fast. At least that's probably what she was saying.
I finally got my degree from Ohio State.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, right. All that was when I joined Burroughs Corporation and moved from Columbus to Dayton, working for a gentleman by the name of Bill Cushing, who was a very fine man, highly intelligent, had been in the military, very high-ranking officer in the military, and very dedicated man. I learned an awful lot from him about life in general.
He was some kind of a mentor?
Yes. I'm not sure I'd even heard that term back then, but he was a mentor, definitely.
Okay. So now, which child came after what?
That would be your Aunt Janice. Janice Kidd. She was a very pleasant surprise.
How old was Gary at this time?
Gary was probably about 8, I think.
Okay.
I have to go back and check some dates. That would be my guess, I don't think.
An offhand guess we do.
Yeah. First thing we learned was that girls are very different from boys.
Like what?
Well, you would yell at the boys and they would hunker down and try to do better. You yell at a girl and they cry. Right.
I'm guessing Janice was especially a learning curve based on how she is today.
Right, absolutely.
She's a lot of fun.
Oh, she's a great lady. All of our kids are great. Very nice personalities. Very dedicated people. Very serious people. But they all have a good sense of humor. They enjoy laughing.
And they enjoy life.
They enjoy life. Right.
Can't be too serious and can't be too careless.
Right. Have to be focused on something.
But we have to enjoy.
Right.
Okay. Let me guess. Then came Lori.
Came Lori. She is a very good person, a very good lady, very loving, not more so, but in a different way.
And yes.
She just reaches out to people.
Her way is more apparent.
Yeah. And then came the big surprise.
Mom?
Your mom.
Teresa.
Yes. So she's about
Or Terry, as it's
5 years younger than Lori. So we had felt that our family was here. We really weren't expecting another one. So
that's how it came with John too.
The kids. Well, you're a teenager now. So Gary was probably a teenager when stop and check the dates, but that sounds about right.
Well, this baby has the advantage of the fact that I know Mom and hear her talking when she's alone, when she's not with her family and siblings. And honestly, she feels like a lot of her siblings still treat her as if she was the 5-year-old.
You know.
And she kind of wishes that they would. She's been gone.
Well, that happens in all the families, I think. If you look at your Uncle Gary, he was born in 53, so it makes he'll be 56 this year. So 56 is a lot older than 30, right?
A lot older than 40.
Your mother 40 now?
Yes.
She's not that old.
41.
40. Time flies.
Maybe 42, I don't know. She's definitely older than 40.
Yeah, okay. But as they get older, that makes me older too. A lot older.
Yes, but you certainly have stayed very active.
Yes. We enjoy being active.
Certainly you don't slump around on your old cave saying, "In my time, things were different. People were more proper." So, how have your children changed you for the better and for the worse?
Oh, well, I think they've made me much more understanding, more accustomed to different points of view, because everyone has their own personality, their own ideas, their own thoughts, and so you get introduced to a lot of new ideas that way. And all of our children are very intelligent. They're basically very good people, dedicated, hardworking, and they love and respect you. That's what you look for, what you hope for.
What are your current hobbies?
Oh, current hobby. I guess, well, I play games on the computer every day, almost every day.
Me too.
Oma plays, what the heck is it she plays? It's a complicated game. I play solitaire, but you don't win much in solitaire. Helen, if you're really good at what she does, you can win every game. But it can take a long time, sometimes a day or two.
Wow. Now, my games are, of course, video games, like, the type of titles I'd be looking for would be Ultimate Destruction 7 or something,
Yeah.
but I don't really have anything like that. I just have everything and anything Star Wars.
And I still enjoy reading. I don't read books as much anymore, but we get several magazines, Fortune, Business Week, Newsweek.
So you read, only you read picture books.
Well, they're
Well,
short stories.
And informed
It's
and
world affairs.
Forum, news, law.
Forum news, that's what it's like.
Okay. What else do you do? What type of other things do you do now that you're retired?
Well, we go to the Y 3 mornings a week for a senior exercise program.
Yes, this is why you're so strong.
Well, it helps.
Yes.
It keeps the muscles from going away completely.
Mm-hmm.
And we enjoy social activities. We go to the Elks normally on Wednesday night for dinner. There's quite a group of people there that we've gotten to know. And well, this Monday we went to the Argosy, which is a gambling boat on the Ohio River. Spent a day down there. And I'm in the 82nd Airborne Division Association. And we have a meeting once a month, like Saturday of the month. And we usually have around 25, 30 people, about half ladies, half men. So we've gotten to know some of those people very well, and they're very good people, and we enjoy their company.
Okay. So, what do you have to say about the fact that you and your wife are so incredibly active, young, and strong for your age?
We never think about age. We just kept going, kept physically active, trying to stay busy, and enjoy what we're doing.
Huh? I'm just going to summarize it. Okay. Do you have any last words?
This has been a very interesting exercise. It made me think a lot about the past, which I don't do too often.
I hope it's brought back some good memories.
It has definitely brought back some good memories. And I've enjoyed the time with you very much.
I've enjoyed the time with you very much. And I believe that closes the interview.
Yes.
Unless you have anything that you need to finish up that you may have forgotten that you...
I think that's about it.
Okay. It's been a nice interview.
Very good.
Thank you.